Hello? in my camera. Okay, look, the camera's actually working okay. Had so many camera problems, but I think looks like I'm taller than the camera though. Is that right? Maybe I'll just raise it up just a little more. All right. Check. Well, good morning, everyone. Sandro's just fixing my camera, so I look good on camera.
I don't know. I didn't say that.
Didn't say that. Let's not go that far. I hope everybody had a fantastic weekend. It's hard to believe it's Monday again already. And special thanks for everybody who came out last Friday, which was kind of crazy after all that snow, the snow that we had. And but a few of you did make their way in from Calgary, and even Lorene from Edmonton was able to come. I think it was a good meeting. If you didn't make that meeting though, in all seriousness, I think you should watch the video. And I think Morgan has it uploaded into the portal today, so you can watch it. But I'm quite confident that'll be really helpful to you in working with buyers. I shared all of the secrets that I know when it comes to working with buyers in that meeting. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. All right, let me share my screen so I can show you what I got here this morning. Because there's always something good every Monday morning, right? Okay. Hang on a second. Let me just move this down here. There we go. All right. Current events. I guess there's a CARA trade show coming up. I guess it's called Trade Show and Professional Day. I haven't been to it. I'm just learning because I'm new to CARA, so I'm trying to stay current on what they do there. And they've got their 2024 annual general meeting for all of you in Central Alberta. That's March 20th. And the trade show is at 8 a.m. to 1:30. So if you're interested in going to that, I guess go onto the CARA website and you can sign up for that. Broker Summit recap. Oh my goodness. We had, so Krebs put on a broker summit, and we had Jeff Kahane from Jeff Kahane Law there. We had Rex. Why can't I think of his name from Rex? It's escaped me for a moment. But anyway, he handles any of our insurance claims that for being sued. He handles that. And then we also had Doug Dixon from RECA, not Rex, RECA. And the big question that started everything out is about assignment sales. So I thought I'd give you a real recap on this. And hey, good morning, Rika. Assignment sales, what's happened is, and this has actually happened to me as well, but there's been a whole bunch of people from Ontario that bought new construction in Calgary and Edmonton, especially. I don't know too much in Central Alberta, but definitely Calgary, Edmonton, where a whole bunch of people put down a deposit with new construction and expecting the market to go up, which it has. And now they want to resell it before they take possession. So they call us real estate agents and like, I want to assign my contract to somebody else for a higher amount of money. And so we talked about the problems that come with this. And I even learned something. This is why you got to go to these meetings, because you learn something you didn't know. If you do an assignment, according to REX, they take the approach like on a listing contract, do you have a legal right to sell the property? Their definition is you don't have the legal right to sell the property because you don't own it. All right. So because you haven't taken possession of the property, you have a contract with the builder. You don't own the property at this moment in time. You only have a contract. So REX will not cover you if you get involved in an assignment sales. The other thing about it is the builder contract, almost every one of them have a clause in there that they either won't allow the person to do an assignment, or there's actually a cost associated with it. So I had a phone call from somebody from Ontario. They wanted to do this, and I actually looked into it. I was just curious to see what the options were. And it was interesting to do an assignment. The builder would allow it, but at a certain point, they would charge money to do it. But here's where it also gets even more complex. How are you supposed to get paid on an assignment? Because you really can't create a listing contract because the person doesn't own the property yet. And by the way, because you don't own the property, the real estate boards won't allow you to list it on MLS because you don't own it. So you can market the property off market, which is all fine if it works with the builder, if they even allow it. But then it's sort of, like I said, getting paid is difficult. I've come to the conclusion, I think the only way you can get paid is if you get the buyer to pay you. You'll have to get the buyer or have the seller put money into our trust account for your fees in advance before you start marketing the property. That would be the only way I think you could get paid. And again, that's only if the builder will allow it. But don't forget, something goes wrong and you get sued, you're on your own. RE/X won't cover you. So it was recommended by RE/X to not even touch these assignments. The area form, like the area purchase contract, it is assignable. And so if you do get into a situation where you're representing a buyer or a seller, and they want to assign the property to somebody else, they can do that using the area forms. The question was, well, hey, what if right at closing, if the new buyer shows up and they want to purchase the property, and the person who has the original purchase contract wants to reassign it to somebody new? Yes, that actually can be done. Obviously, it doesn't necessarily matter from the seller's perspective who ultimately buys the property, as long as the money shows up at the day that it's supposed to show up. So it can be done, but what it was recommended from Jeff Kahane is that at the time of the purchase contract, the original purchase contract, the terms of the assignment should actually be stated, and you should be working with a lawyer to have the right language. That's what was recommended. To just do an assignment, like completely blindside the seller at closing with the seller not being aware of it, he recommends that is not the best way to go, because it can create some problems at closing, which I don't fully understand why, because in my opinion, if the money is there and it goes over to the seller, I can't see that there should be too much of a problem at closing. But that was Jeff's recommendations anyway. Commercial deals, it happens all the time, but it's always very clear what the assignment will be. Now, we all know what we have seen in the past, and I still even chuckle to this day. Every now and then we'll get a contract where the realtor representing the buyer, who knows very, very little. Oh, perfect timing. Human, our in-house lawyer, is here. We'll get a realtor who puts the name of the buyer and then and/or nominee. We're still seeing that, Human. Yes, we're still. Yes. We're talking about assignment sales. Because I was at the broker summit meeting, and Jeff Kahane was there, your favorite person.
You're on the record.
Please understand, and Human will back me up on this, if you put the word and/or nominee, it unfortunately what it does is it makes it difficult to understand who the actual buyer is. And if it ever goes in front of a judge and a judge can't fully understand who the buyer is, the contract will be deemed unenforceable. So you see, this is why we talk about assignment sales, all these realtors in the past, they wanted, they might be representing, maybe it's a buyer that might be putting it into a company name or some other person at some point because it's more of an investment, or maybe it's a builder that's going to be buying the property and redeveloping it. There was, I get the reasons why and or nominee was being used because they wanted to assign the contract to somebody else, but you can't use that language. What you need to do is if there's a possibility of assigning the contract and you want that to be agreed upon by the seller up front, you should clearly state who the other party might be that you'll be assigning the contract to. And like I said, I would consult a lawyer on the exact verbiage and the language to be on that contract, so there's no misunderstanding. But this is a perfect question for you though, Hooman, because it was brought up that the area forms are assignable contracts. And whereas the builder forms, a lot of them times have conditions where you can't, or there's a penalty or whatnot. But it was brought up, if we want to assign this contract right at the time of closing, I'm buying the property, but all of a sudden now I have a friend that I'm going to assign it to at closing. Jeff Kahane suggested that without it clearly written in advance, it still could create some problems at closing. My interpretation was if the other person had the money and the money comes in. Now I know if it comes down to mortgages, that's a different story. If it's all cash, you correct me if I'm wrong, it should be relatively smooth if it's all cash.
Well, both yes and no, right? Because we ran into this problem. We were having one of these contracts, and the seller's lawyer was not agreeable to my client transferring or assigning the contract to somebody else. Because he said that he had concern. This was a skip transfer situation,
right?
And for skip transfers, there's a lot of concern by all parties involved regarding fraud, right? And his argument was that because it was not specifically mentioned in the contract that it was assignable, he was not consenting to skip transfer. He says, do what you have to do after closing, title is yours, but before we are not consenting, right? So in that case, adding those words or adding a specific clause that says it's assignable, or both parties agree that it's assignable or something, then that makes it so much easier.
So in this case, you've got a seller's lawyer who is rejecting a new buyer stepping in at the 11th hour, even though the money is there, and they're rejecting this.
Yeah, because ultimately, if you're using the transfer of title documents, right, it's their document. We are not authorized to amend the purchasers or the description there, right? So if you want to change the buyer's name on title, it has to be with the consent of the person who actually drafted the document. So what we can do is that we can just either pick the same closing date, which could cause a little bit of more than a little bit of complications, or you can just pick the following day as the new closing date. So you actually go through two transactions, right? One, you close the first one with the original seller and buyer, and then the other one either on the same day or on the following day between the buyer and the new buyer, right? So in this way, if you're not getting the consent of the original seller, at least you can ultimately transfer it to the ultimate buyer. But it just creates double the work and a lot of headaches because there's going to be lots of undertakings between the lawyers regarding discharging of mortgages and so on and so forth.
Okay, so if I understand this correctly, then on a skip transfer, basically you're trying to transfer this to another buyer before you actually take the possession of the property. That's what a skip transfer is. Whereas an assignment, you more or less are taking possession and then assigning it to somebody else.
Correct.
But it's happening simultaneously.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, that makes now I understand maybe what Jeff was saying about how it can have complications at closing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yes. So the bottom line is, if you really believe there's a chance that you are working with a client and you want to reassign it to somebody else, your options are clearly get the language stated up front in the beginning that all parties agree, or what you'd have to do is get an amendment to the contract, and all parties would have to agree to a new buyer. A new buyer's name, amending the contract. You're saying that would be the best way to handle it?
Absolutely, yeah. But the problem is that if you're dealing with the seller who after conditions are waived, has no incentive to be flexible with you, then it's the same problem, right? Because most of the time when you're assigning, they kind of get suspicion that either there's more money involved or something else. Everybody wants a piece of the pie, right? So they're not gonna just voluntarily agree to assign to somebody else.
Yeah, because the seller doesn't like the idea of you reassigning it for more money. Yes.
So in assignment, is there something like the original buyers, let's say there were originally two buyers, one of them always has to stay in the contract until closing or no? No?
Nope, that's what we're just saying. You can either amend it with changing the name, or it can clearly state that it is gonna be a reassigned. So that's how you have to do to begin in one of these situations. But again, you cannot use the word and or nominee. And if we see any of that language coming into our brokerage on a contract, that's gonna come back to you, because that's not an enforceable contract. And it hasn't been. In fact, RECA came out with that way back in 2016. Like, this is not old news. They actually announced in 2016. But still, we've got, you know, what happens is we have realtors out there, and this is actually my little rant for a minute, by the way. We have, you know, this whole thing about we're supposed to follow our clients' lawful instructions. Realtors, there's some realtors out there that think that the client can decide absolutely anything. So if the client says, no, I want add or nominee in the contract, because that's my lawful instruction to you, that you have to do it. No. We do not give our clients that kind of power. The lawful instructions are only if it actually is allowed and makes sense, okay? They don't have the control to tell us what to do unless it literally makes sense and is lawful both. You as a real estate agent have to take control of that and tell your client, no, we cannot do that. Just because you're telling me you want me to do this, no, we can't do that. I'm sorry, that language is not allowed, and you have to explain why, but you just don't do it. But we have agents out there, because I even had one recently. That's what the agent told me. He says, well, my client told me to put and or nominee, and I just followed his lawful instruction. And my inside voice was, you're an idiot. But that wasn't my outside voice. That was just my inside voice. Now, obviously, they talked a little bit about multiple offers. Multiple offers is the talk of the town these days. There was just a reminder to all of us that because there are some people that are still a little confused out there with the old rules that we had versus the new rules that we had. For those of us that have been in this business a long time, like me, we used to have some crazy rules that the real estate boards used to put on multiple offers, you know, to try to make the field a level playing field for the buyers and the sellers. Well,
so when you're looking at the overall big items coming down, you want to make sure you have one.
There we go. Somebody's talking while I'm talking. That never happens. So in the old days, there was all kinds of crazy rules, you know, like for example, if you brought your own buyer to your own listing in a multiple offer situation, you had to get the broker to present. Now it's all the seller's decision. They just wanted to give us a reminder that the seller gets to control how they want multiple offers to be handled. Okay, so if the seller wants to have an auction, they can have an auction. It's up to them. Yes, absolutely. It's our job as real estate agents to help them understand the pros and the cons to how they want to handle this. If they want to not disclose that there's other offers, they have a right to do that. Now, and it's really funny because if you have a hot property that goes on the market and what's the first thing that happens? Realtors keep calling you. Do you have any offers? How many offers do you have? How many offers do you have? And there's a lot of realtors to this day that think that you're obligated to tell them how many offers you have. You're not, right? If your client has instructed you, and by the way, you want to get these instructions in writing, okay? It's best to get every instruction. You have the conversation with your seller and get them to give it to you in writing so that it's very clear what they've asked you to do and what not to do. But you tell the agent, I'm sorry, I can't disclose to you. My seller has authorized me not to disclose the existence of offers. You can just tell them that flat out. So I can't tell you whether we have any or not. But if you have an offer, you can submit it. And of course, this has definitely created some confusion and some frustration to the buyers, because what's also happening is you might even get, we're getting a lot of verbal, where, you know, you might have a situation where the seller's realtor, they'll call you and say, tell you what, if your client is willing to come up to this price, we'll consider your offer. But then they called another realtor and said the same thing. And so they're creating an auction without you even knowing there is an auction. And this is what's happening right now in these multiple offer situations. And it can be very, very frustrating. I want to just remind everybody, there is no counter offer to your buyer client unless the seller signs it in writing. Now, I had a question came to me last night. The question was, Rob, if the seller's realtor sends back a text message saying that my client is countering at this amount, is that considered an actual legal counter offer? Perfect question for Human, our lawyer. Could you argue in court that that's actually a legitimate counter offer, Human?
Like usually I know to have the backup and everything is better. It helps a lot more, obviously, if you have it like signed in the proper format by the seller. But you can argue the law of agency. That's why the realtors work in this business. You are the client's agents. So if you are representing on behalf of your client that yes, he would or she would agree to this offer, I would argue that it's in writing, you have evidence of it, unless the agency somehow is broken, and that's not on the buyer or the other side to argue, then that would be between the client and agent, saying that this person acted outside of the scope of his agency relationship. I would absolutely argue this.
Okay.
This is it.
People always counter wire.
Well, that's what we're seeing now. What apparently happened last night is the seller sent a counter offer via text to 2 different realtors.
Oh.
Right. And you can see now it's one thing to do it verbally, but it's another thing to do it in writing, right? Because with I mean, you correct me if I'm wrong, but the statutes of fraud says there's no verbal, so there's nothing that can be done there, right?
When you're dealing with the land, absolutely it has to be in writing.
Has to be in writing. But you got to, yeah, now you can see the frustration is that you get this text back. And you think, okay, if my client agrees to this because I got a text back and a counter, let's now get it in writing. And then you find out, oh, they went and accepted another offer. And I got a text back, an actual text counter. So you can see now your client may still lose the property, but you have an argument. Maybe you can sue for damages.
I've always made it a habit to ask, am I the only one who's getting this counter, or is this phone call going to everybody?
Yeah, well, last night the realtor said, no, I sent it to more than one. They openly admitted it, said.
Yeah, because I've had people say,
Yeah.
I'm calling you saying this is where my client stands, but you're not the only one I'm calling. I'm gonna call the 5 other offers I've got.
Sorry, playing devil's advocate, though, I also see their side of it, right? You can make multiple offers, but if you withdraw one of them on time, doesn't mean that you've breached your contractual obligations, right? I offered this banana to you and to Sandra at $1.
Right.
Whoever offers the $1 pays me first. I'm gonna withdraw my other offer saying that, okay, it's already taken, thank you. Right? So maybe that's what they're doing. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that, right? It's like, it's if both accept and communicate that to the original person within the time before he actually has the chance to withdraw it, then yes.
So what you're saying is I could send out a text to 3 different people saying, whoever gives me this price first, I'll accept, and I'll withdraw the other 2.
It's risky business, but if if 2 people communicate at the same time, then it's kind of like a risk that you're taking, right? But if you know the real estate market, you're like, you know what, people are going to act within an hour at least. It's not a matter of moments or seconds. Then you run that risk, and if on time you withdraw the other one, really, it wasn't accepted, or it wasn't communicated back to you, whether that accepted between the agent and the buyer, that has nothing to do with you and the seller. So you're still you're still doing okay.
So what if two agree is simultaneously?
Well, and that's the problem, that's where the breach happens.
Yeah,
And the problem with council and like people, other people not taking them to the court, right? Because we do litigation, we know how expensive or time consuming things are, right? There are times that I deal with other lawyers and they blatantly says that we have a practice of not doing X, Y, or Z when the contract says otherwise. What am I gonna do? Report everyone to law society or take them to the court, or my client's gonna do that? Most people don't do it, right? And that's why there's so many
that,
unfortunately unethical behavior in my opinion.
yeah, that's exactly right, because you're bang on. Most people will not go as far as court goes. They're frustrated, they're angry, but you're not gonna take it to court, because even then, you said, you can argue this in court, but we both know that it depends on the judge. It always depends on the judge. There's no guarantee you're gonna win if you take it to court. So anyway, now you can understand why we brought this up at the broker summit, because there's still confusion on this, and it's very, I think what we need to do as agents, at least I want to see this in our brokerage, is let's really prepare our buyers. And this is where, again, it comes down to explaining to buyers how we work, how we can best represent them. We know it in most cases right now, if you're a buyer trying to buy a property in Alberta, you are at a disadvantage. You are most likely going to be competing with other buyers, and they need to be explained what the sellers can and can't do, and the fact that we are at a disadvantage. Let's acknowledge that after you've explained it all, that the sellers are in control and they're able to do all these things. Now, working with me, we can maybe position ourselves to give ourselves a better chance at getting our offer accepted, because there are some strategies, and I talked a lot of bit about on that on Friday as well at our buyer masterclass. So, but your buyers, they just need to be prepared, because unfortunately, if most of them are not, they're confused, they're frustrated, and they feel like the seller's agent and the sellers themselves are treating it unfairly. That's how they feel, and that's not a good place to be.
So a seller could ask you to divulge all the offers?
That's right. The seller can divulge all the offers if they want to.
Makes sense.
Totally. But it's just but I think you'll find very, very few times in the market like we're in that they would, because, even just recently we had one where, the offers can be, without knowing what the offers are, they can be, dramatically different when the buyer doesn't know what that is, right? So I think in a current market conditions that we're in, it's probably not in the best seller's interest to disclose what they are. But it sure leaves the buyer vulnerable, because you don't know where to offer. Every buyer is sitting there going, well, okay, I want this property, but I don't want to overpay for it, but I really want this property. Well, what is overpaying? Well, who knows? Right now, who knows?
It's like when they're computing, if they get paid too much, if they don't get it, they're like, oh, maybe I should have paid you a little more.
Yeah.
Always in that situation.
I just recently, I'm glad you brought that up, because some of these buyers, they aggressively make an offer, especially with no conditions, and we're seeing more and more of this. And then the next morning, you wake up and they went, I think maybe I overpaid for this. Like, I'm stressed,
Yeah.
They start having second thoughts. We have seen situations already this year where the deposit money never arrived. So if you want to maybe give your seller, if you're on the selling side especially, a little reassurance, or maybe even if you're with a buyer, to stop your buyer from having buyer's remorse, most people can do an e-transfer for like $2,000 to $3,000 on the spot. Why not do an e-transfer like right now? And I just did this. I demanded a $2,500 e-transfer like that night.
I had the recent multiple offer situation I was in. There were 11 offers, and the agent straight up told me, if you're serious, bring the deposit along when I'm presenting the offer. And I gave him my deposit, and when he went to present it to the executor, my deposit draft was with it.
That's great if you're doing a draft and the bank is open.
Yeah.
But if it's 8 o'clock at night on a Saturday,
Right, yeah, that's.
then you could do an e-transfer, at least get some money to transfer. And if you do an e-transfer, please, please, please do me a favor, okay? Let me know there's an e-transfer coming. I actually have to have a meeting with Janine today about this because we're trying to figure out actually how to manage these e-transfers now because they show up. Number one, they show up in my inbox. The password, I go to deposit it. I don't know what the password is. Like I get all these crazy questions like I'm supposed to know. Probably the realtor doing the deal knows, but how the hell am I supposed to know, right? So I can't put the money in. We generally use in property management, we used to use the word rental. I take it, just have your client just put rental. That just makes my life a lot easier. But I need to know what deal it's tied to as well. So especially if you're doing a deal at 8 o'clock at night like this, send me an email and give me the details. It's very, very clear, okay? We as brokerages are not allowed to put any money in our trust account unless we know where it's coming from. That's mandatory. That's a RECA requirement from a brokerage. We just can't willy-nilly put money in our trust account without knowing where it comes from. So I need to know that, okay? Now, ghosting during multiple offers. Oh, does that ever happen? Yeah, I know. Even I get the phone calls. Rob, I'm so frustrated. I'm getting ghosted by the other agent. Yeah. So Krebs, by the way, and I'm pretty sure Cara will do the same, and Ray in Edmonton will do the same. They will. You can file a complaint about this, by the way, because it's not professional conduct. Ghosting other industry members does not meet the requirements, okay, of professional conduct. The sad thing is, the way it's going right now, we could probably be filing complaints every day to Krebs and Cara and Ray in Edmonton with the ghosting. It's becoming extremely frustrating because how terrible is it? You submit an offer, you don't know if you're competing, you don't get any communication from the listing agent, you just submitted your offer and you're sitting in a waiting. And then you might, if you're lucky, get a short text if you're lucky, but the communication is falling apart. And it is getting very frustrating. And Krebs, especially, because I was at the summit, so this is more of a Krebs meeting that I was in. I wasn't at the one for Cara or Ray, but I'm quite confident that the problems are the same at those boards as well. But they're getting this feedback all the time that, yes, this ghosting business, when we bring an offer, is got to change. I don't know what we're going to have to do about this, but I really think the industry has to buckle down. We have to start. I think we have to start finding people because, you know, our whole MLS system works with professional cooperation. That's how it works. And we can't function as an industry if I work my tail off. I mean, you think of how hard we work to actually get a client, how hard we work to get that client under contract. Then we work hard to find them a property. We put all of this effort in and bring an offer that's a legitimate offer from a legitimate buyer that can afford to buy the property and complete the transaction. And I got a ghosting from the listing agent. I can't even get the respect of even knowing that it's even sold. Some people have submitted an offer, got no response, and then all of a sudden they look on Pillar 9, it's sold. Got no response, but oh, it's sold. Yeah.
I've had it so many times. And it's not, and these people have their assistants on there that you can contact if they're not answering, and then their assistants don't even know what's happening because clearly the assistant's not getting the offer. And the actual agent knows, and they wouldn't even acknowledge, because I do buyers a lot, and they wouldn't even acknowledge that, okay, send me an email saying received this card.
Yes. We even tried to put on the contract if your offer is rejected. We've actually got a clause for that. Can't get anybody to fill that out. So we're, you know, when it comes to communication, it really is, I have to say this, it's worse today than it was 10 years ago. And I think we have to do something. I don't have all the answers to it, but anyway, I just wanted you to know that the boards do take those calls and they will get involved if I think they have a right to even issue some fines.
I had nobody from Goldwell, but I had a real estate agent that said we haven't accepted offer. And it was way more than I budgeted for.
Right.
And I said, and there was no financing don't worry, he says, we have 48 hours to give the deposit.
Oh,
Oh my.
oh, see. If you didn't hear what Sandro just said, this is very disturbing. There was a buyer that he was approving for a mortgage, and the buyer's realtor ended up getting in a competing offer situation, went higher than what it was approved for, got sent over to Sandro. Sandro looked at it and said, well, I don't know that I can get a mortgage approved for this because you've gone a lot higher than what the approval was. And then the buyer's realtor says, oh, it's okay. We got 48 hours before the deposit's due. There's a perfect example of why I said, get $2,000 or $2,500, because I think it might be a game changer for a buyer like that. If I had to fork out $2,500 that I would lose, right? While you're thinking maybe I can get my mortgage. And I'm actually really glad that Sandra brought that up, because I want you to remember this. Just because the buyer does not put a financing condition on the contract doesn't mean the buyer's paying cash. I don't know why I get this from realtors, and they say the buyer's paying cash. I'm like, well, how do you know? Well, they didn't put a financing condition. It didn't say cash anywhere. It just says that they're confident enough that they don't have to put a financing condition. But of course, what also happens is then all of a sudden you've got this contract that has nothing on it, and then the mortgage company says, well, we have to do an appraisal. So then you call if you got the buyer and he wrote one of these offers, you call the listing realtor and you say, oh, by the way, we need to get an appraisal company in. Appraisal? Well, you guys were paying cash. No, we were never paying cash. We have to get an appraisal. And well, there's nothing on the contract that says we're doing an appraisal. We don't have to let you back in. We've had situations where the seller said, no, we're not letting you back in. Again, if you haven't outlined the terms of the contract, but you see, at the same time, if you would have put in a term that the seller will allow a bank appraisal, then all of a sudden the seller looks at that and goes, well, these guys don't even have their financing. So then it makes it's kind of a conundrum, because it makes it look like maybe your offer isn't that strong. These are some of the problems that we're being faced with. Okay, reporting of sales on Pillar 9. Oh my goodness, that's another thing. There's been a lot of complaints coming in that the sales are, because you've got realtors who have a hot property, the listing realtor, and they're trying to get buyers from this property, right? They're trying to get unrepresented buyers to call, so they're delaying reporting the sales. And there's a lot of frustration about this, that it's showing up as an active listing, especially in cases where there was a multiple offer, there was an unconditional offer. The listing realtor wants to wait until they have money before putting it sold, which I can understand that. But they're not putting it even in the private remarks. Or you, the realtor, are not looking in the private remarks. You're just going right to showing time and you're booking the showing, and you're not looking in the private remarks either. And of course, it's frustrating because the property is already sold and your client's seeing it. The second thing is, this is some feedback that they got at Pillar 9. Well, we have been for quite some time, we've been allowing the properties to stay active on realtor.ca. Even if it's marked pending, it still shows active on realtor.ca. There's been some frustration with buyers because they feel like, well, the property is available, right? So then they call and then they find out it's not available, or the realtor tries to use language that makes it kind of sound like it's available, but not available, because we're all in the business of trying to pick up clients. And there's been some reports of some negative feedback from the public on that. So handle that with care. But if you do have a property that you have sold and you're waiting for money, you could definitely put in the private remarks, and I would recommend you should, or like I said, get a deposit right away, and then you could probably mark it sold. If they send you $2,500 in an e-transfer, probably pretty safe that it's sold. The word suite in public remarks, we're still getting problems with this. There's a lot of realtors that are still not. This has been going on as long as I've been in the business. You've got this illegal basement suite, right? And there are so many realtors out there that don't want to put the word illegal. Okay, or the seller, this is another, the seller says, no, I don't want that word in the public. That's gonna make it, that's gonna tip off the city of Edmonton or the city of Calgary or whatever, that my property has an illegal basement suite. You know, so then they give that lawful instruction. Okay, but I want you to put, there's a suite in the basement, or they're still putting the word non-conforming or mother-in-law suite, all these words that are trying to make it look like, okay, there is a suite down there that's, it's not necessarily legal, but we're not saying the word illegal, like you're just trying to skirt around it, right? So if you see this, by the way, you should report it to CREB. Every listing on, or to Cara or to Ray, but every listing has a, at the bottom, you just have to click one on your mouse and it reports it to the board. And I think that's, it's to me, it's very important that if we're all going to play in a level playing field, we should be reporting anytime we see something that's not right. If you have a suite downstairs that's not legal, you have to call it an illegal suite, period. So,
Hey, Rob, can I make a quick comment on that?
yes.
So I've actually been fined for this, and it was really, really annoying because on the like on the above in the listing details, you have, it says like illegal suite, but I ended up getting fined. I had even like illegal suite listed twice in the listing description, but I missed one instance where it just said suite and they fined me.
Right.
So just be careful with that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Well, you can tell this is why they brought it up at the broker summit, because they are absolutely cracking down. And you know, maybe they're going overboard, maybe they're not, but I think that's a good point. Thanks for bringing that up, Sean. This is why it has to say illegal everywhere. Yes.
I also have seen recently where, you know, where on the top and where there just the black parts, there's an option for a suite and street, and it says none. And then in the comments, it says none, but in the pictures, either you can see that there is a kitchen down there that's clearly illegal.
Right.
Or when you go to show, there is a kitchen down there that did not mention anything on it.
Yeah, but if they don't mention it, that's actually okay.
Just ignore it. Right?
Yes, yeah, because if you're not marketing the property as having any type of suite, then that's okay, even though, but it should still be on the purchase contract. It should be pretty clear to the buyer that they're buying an illegal suite that's downstairs.
You're right that the buyer is okay with the basement.
That's right.
They just don't want to use that word.
They just don't want to use that word because they don't want to tip off the city. That's right.
And that's happened to us quite a few times where the cities looked through MLS and seen a illegal suite, and then they send them a letter saying they have to convert it. So I can see why they had hesitation to putting that illegal suite in.
That's exactly right. Thanks, Lindsay. Okay, reusing old MLS photos. This also was brought up. I think everyone knows, you would think everyone knows, you're just not allowed to go and take photos from a previous listing without written permission. And apparently, I didn't know it had gone this far, but apparently there's even some civil suits about it. This is I didn't realize that this was a copyright infringement. Only the lawyers could have come up with that one, right?
There's money in it.
There's money in it. Yeah. Copyright infringement for stealing photos that were previously used. But I guess this is still an ongoing problem. Nobody in our brokerage has broken this rule that I'm aware of, but I'm just giving you the recap from the summit meeting. And but you cannot take anyone else's photos without their permission. So just remember that. But there's certainly nothing wrong with calling up, the other agent that had it listed previous to you and probably work out a deal. And maybe if the photos are good, you might get them for half price. Who knows, right? So, but just get it in writing. That's all.
What if you buy a property that you plan on renting and you use the pictures of
If you buy a property that you're planning on renting, well, it's the same thing. You can't use the photos from the MLS without written permission. Yeah. And that's where the copyright infringement is. So you don't have to be a licensed agent. You could actually still get sued for doing it.
And what did they say? Like, it's gonna all sued.
Well, I guess you could always argue that you suffered some kind of damage, right? There's always that.
Pictures there, it just brought so many emotions.
I had a painting on the wall that now people know about it, and now my risk of getting someone breaking into my house is going up. I mean, these are arguments that people will take to court, right?
You have to be careful with that too, Rob, because the realtor might not own the pictures they use, depending on the contract with the photographer. So you
Right.
could be buying somebody's pictures that they don't own.
There you go. That's a good point. Yeah, thanks for that. So you can see why this turned in. It's turned into such a big ordeal that it'd probably be best just to get new pictures taken, because I never even thought about that. I mean, even the other realtor could say, sure, I'll sell you the pictures, but you don't realize that there's still something in that photograph that somebody else might take exception to. So, okay, next. Buyer representation agreement, enforcing the agreement. You're gonna love this, Human. So I had this great conversation with Wiseman Law Offices, and I don't know, maybe this is something even Agahi Law wants to look at. We'll see. You guys can decide, but they have a division to their law firm in Ontario, and that basically they on contingency only. They don't. This is what's great. They don't charge upfront for enforcing contracts, especially buyer representation agreement contracts. And their fee structure is this: if they send out a demand letter and the money comes within 7 days, they actually don't even charge a fee if it comes within 7 days. If they collect it under 60 days, they take 15% of your commission. Under 120, it goes to 20%. 120 days and older, 25%. Sorry, I'm a little confusing there. I think it goes from 25 to 30. I rewrote this last night. It was late when I did it. I think it goes to a maximum of 35%. But anyway, the bottom line is, they will, all you have to do is, if you sign a buyer representation agreement and you believe that your buyer has now bought a property without you and breached the contract, you send a copy of the contract to Wiseman Law, and they will send some nasty lawyer letters that apparently can also include them reporting to the credit bureau if you for breach of contract. So they're really waving a big stick. Now he told me that they've kind of mastered this. This is why they can do it on contingency. They've gotten really good at this, that they will do it on contingency because their ability to collect is pretty darn high. And I'm really glad to see this, because one of my biggest beefs with the buyer representation agreement as opposed to the seller representation agreement is that we were left exposed. With the seller representation agreement, we can put a caveat on the property, says so right in the contract, but we don't have that luxury with the buyer representation agreement. We're left for going to small claims court, which is, time consuming and a bit of a hassle. I mean, I don't know about you, but for me, I'm happy to give up 15-20% and let somebody else chase down my client that breached the contract. So you guys can pick and choose, but this is now available. And like I said, maybe this is something you guys want to look at too. Who knows?
The percentages are not low.
Yeah, percentages are not low. This also caught my eye. I've never used buyer choice homes inspections, so there, and I'm sure there may be other companies that are offering this. So it's not that I'm necessarily endorsing buyer choice home inspections, but with these multiple offer situations and buyers taking a really big chance at going in with an offer without an inspection condition, these guys are now offering what they call advisory services. And it says very clearly, this does not replace the value of a full property inspection, but it is a separate service to support our clients in this challenging time. How does it work? So our certified professional inspector joins you and your client during your viewing typically 45 to 60 minutes, and they provide a verbal survey on site, right as you're looking at the property. High-level visual, non-evasive survey of all the major components like electrical, furnace, AC, plumbing, foundation, structure, exterior, grading, interior finishes, roof, the attic, and all that sort of thing, including the infrared and moisture detection. So they're going to walk around with the camera and put that on, and this is all happening while you're just doing the showing with your client. And upon a successful acceptance of your offer for a reduced rate, will return to complete the full inspection. Well, that, of course, that means if the seller will let you in, or maybe it has to be after possession. I mean, one or the other, but they'll complete it just so that you might be aware of anything else that they didn't catch during the visual. I think it's pretty good. I mean, obviously, like it says, it doesn't replace a full proper inspection. But that could really lend to some confidence for your client. Yeah.
What is our legal obligation? Because technically we're booking a showing, we're going.
Yeah.
We're taking somebody there. Can the seller or the seller's realtor come back on us for something?
Well, it's visual, and technically speaking, they should be aware that you're bringing somebody else. But the only thing that they're doing here is they're taking a camera and putting it on certain parts of the house. Now, anytime you use a camera, you are supposed to be getting permission in advance. But I mean, these cameras, though, they're not taking pictures of the house or anything. They're just taking like pictures of the wall. But yes, you are supposed to get permission to do that, to take any type of photographs with an infrared camera. But if they said no, we're not going to accept that, you could still bring in your inspector for a visual without the camera. Yeah. So that's just something to consider. And I would say, if you have your favorite home inspector that you currently use, well, talk to them and see if they are willing to do this kind of thing. And the other thing they got on here, if you require fast advice, this is free. You can take a picture and text it over. If there's some kind of a concern of anything that you're seeing, you can just actually text it over to them and they'll take a look at it and give you some advice.
I have 3 inspectors I use through Buyer's Choice, and all of them are absolutely incredible. Used to be in the construction industry, so their inspectors are good. They have lots and lots of fun toys.
Yeah.
It's super thorough.
Yeah, good. So Julie knows Buyer's Choice. She says they're good. There you go. All right. Interest rate and inflation update by our in-house RBC representative, Sandra Mosca. Is going to tell us all the wonderful things that are happening in the interest rate and inflation world that we all love to hear.
Try to stay awake.
Yeah, try to stay awake.
Hey, everybody. I bet you the camera is just catching my forehead. I'm on my tippy toes here, so. All right. Interest rates. Few things that affect interest rates, right? I'll talk about all the information since the last time I did this presentation. Job openings, business spending, consumer spending, GDP per capita, wage increases, inflation. That's what affects interest rates. Okay, so I'm gonna go over each one just briefly here, so try to keep you guys awake. Job openings, we saw job openings increase, but the actual hours worked have come down. And as a matter of fact, they've come down by the biggest amount since Q2 of 2020, which we remember is COVID. So we're seeing that October and November, we're still running 25% below year-ago levels. Okay, so what does that mean? The economy is not doing that great when it comes to job openings. How's the economy doing with business spending? We're down 9.5% business spending. Consumer spending is surprisingly up by 1%, and which came in as a bit of a surprise. And the sales volumes are up by 5.3%. Something of note is in the US, the consumer spending ticked down by 0.1%. So usually, you know how it works. US sneezes, we catch a cold, right? So we're likely going to follow that path. and which would not be a good thing for the economy. Personal income increased by 0.5%, and GDP is up by 1% this month. Okay, so again, when we talk about the economy, when the economy is doing badly, usually it means that interest rates are going to be coming down. GDP is actually up, but one of the metric that they look at more than the actual GDP is GDP per capita, which that means that what is the output per individual in Canada? Because we have so much immigration coming into Canada, our GDP is per capita is down, and it has been for the last 6 quarters, for the last year and a half. Okay, so again, we're starting to see we're seeing cracks in the economy. Wage increases, right? So the wage increases was a big factor with inflation, right? Because as wages increase in Canada, it means that everything is more expensive for whatever is produced in Canada, and we're actually down on wage increases compared to inflation. So if you're an employee, that's not great news, but if you're looking for interest rates to come down, it's encouraging news. So wage increases actually have actually not kept pace of inflation. Some analysts are predicting that they see a clear path to 2%, which is the Bank of Canada's target rate, right? So between 2 and 3%. So we're seeing that that analysts are saying if we just take the numbers that we've been seeing and we continue that trend, that we should be at 2% by the middle of 2024. Are we there? No. And the reason why is because what's being sticky in terms of inflation is housing costs. So in the States, they actually remove the interest expense as part of the inflation calculation, which is the way that it should be done, because it's kind of like if interest rates are high, then housing costs are going to be high it's directly proportionate to what interest rates are like, right? And so, is it fair to include it in the inflation numbers when really we're seeing that it'll directly affect them? I don't think so. I think the Americans do it better than we do when they calculate these numbers. So what's the bottom line? The bottom isn't falling out of the economy in a way that would really force the Bank of Canada to lower interest rates. But all the indications are showing that there are cracks in the economy, and that the economy is going to require some form of stimulation eventually. And our prediction is that we're going to start to see interest rates come down mid of the year. So on the June decision, we should see interest rates come down by the Bank of Canada. So we're already seeing a downward pressure on fixed rates because of it. And so clients today can get a much better interest rate versus what they could have got even 2 months ago. So all of that is encouraging. It means, and I'm seeing a lot of people coming back into the market. So clients that were on the sidelines because of their, despite my best attempts to educate them towards the contrary, we're staying on the sidelines because of interest rates, and we're likely I'm already starting to see that they're coming back into the market, and there's a lot more demand for pre-approvals these days. So you should be seeing that as a very, very soon as well. So we should see a pretty robust spring market, all things considered. That's it.
And what do you think they're going to come down? A quarter point?
Based on what we're seeing right now, some are saying even half a point, so half a percentage point. I think that they're going to tread very, very lightly, and they're just going to do a quarter of a point at a time. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So but likely consecutive decreases. So we'll probably see quarter of a point in June, another quarter in August. Maybe we might even see as much as half a point in June.
All right, so here's a big question. Can you ask RDC to get more people to list their house, because we need some inventory.
We need inventory. Well, I mean, interestingly enough, is you know that the inventory that comes is that'll come online is directly influenced by a lot of clients that are going to be moving up, right? So, what I've seen is a lot of clients are saying, well, when they move up, generally, what do we see? $100, $200, $250,000, right? An increase in the prices. So somebody's in a $500,000 home, they'll probably want to move out of it and move into a $650,000, $750,000 home, depending on what their personal finances look like. And when you look at that, you know, if you talk about a 5-year rate for $100,000, right? We're at the previous at interest rates today, right? We're talking about over $500 for every 100,000 that we borrow. So it's roughly $550. So if somebody says that they want to move out and they want to buy another property that's $200,000 more expensive, the bottom line is that their monthly expenses are going to cost them roughly $1,100 more per month. But if they have a renewal that's coming up at the same time, that means that whatever they have as an existing balance is also going to go up by about $150, $200 per 100,000, right? So if you already have a $400,000 mortgage, it means that your payment is already going up by about $800. You want to tack on another $200,000 on top of that. Now you're talking about $200,000 more, $2,000 more a month in terms of personal budget. So I mean, just doing this off the top of my head here with the numbers, but you know, $2,000 for your average individual, it's sizable, right? It's a lot of money. And it's the equivalent of buying, you know, 2 or 3 cars and financing them on a monthly basis. I mean, nobody does that, right? So in terms of housing, it's still a sizable amount. So now that interest rates are coming down, if those numbers are if they upgrade by 200 grand rather than $2,000 more, if that number comes down to $1,500 more, I think psychologically it's just a better number. It's a better place to be at. And you know, when at the end of the day, if interest rates end up being at 4%, which is, you know, when all is said and done and the dust settles, that's what we're looking at, probably at what the 5 year is going to look like. Now, is that going to be this year, or is that going to be in 2025 or 2026? Nobody really knows, right? But when the dust settles, that's where we anticipate that interest rates are going to be at. And at 4%, then now you're looking at, you know, that those clients that want to upgrade, instead of it being $2,000 or $1,500, maybe $1,000 more. And that's a no-brainer. And I think we're going to start to see a lot more inventory become available at that time.
So variable rate then is probably better.
Variable rate right now, the discount off the variable rate, unfortunately, is not what it used to be. Typically, we were able to give much higher discounts off the variable rate. And so in terms of the, you know, final interest rate, the prime minus the discount, it's still up there. I mean, it's kind of equalizing on the short-term rates, right? So the variable, the 1 year, the 2 year, they're all around the same spot. So nice thing is that if you go with a 1 year rate, typically you're allowed to renew that rate 4 months before it actually comes up for renewal, right? So if you take a 1 year rate, normally after 8 months, you can renew it. Any bank will allow you to renew your rate for 4 months ahead of time. So if really a 1 year rate is really an 8-month rate when you look at it in those terms. And so I think, you know, short-term pain for long-term gain. If you just grab a short-term rate and you keep yourself open for interest rate reductions in the next 8 months, you'll probably be better off ahead. And if we're still on a downward trend for interest rates, you keep going on a short-term rate, keep renewing on a short-term rate, and then once we've bottomed out, then maybe lock in for the long term.
All right. Thanks, Andrew.
That's it for me. Everybody still look at you've got their camera on. See slowly. Brilliant.
I always like listening to Sandra with that, because it kind of does get into the psyche of how people are thinking, but it definitely, what it comes down to is strategically, does it make sense to do a move up now? If you have a house that's worth, say, 550 today, and you like to get into a 750 house, with the interest rates looming that they might come down, does this look like the right time to do it? Could you argue that?
Well, that's a very strict. You know, I mean, with the inventory as low as it is and bring more buyers into the pool,
I mean, at least that one would be a seller,
that's,
just one seller.
Yeah.
But the seller's gonna become the buyer.
Yeah, they're just struggling.
I'm looking at it from the housing crisis. Pretty bad.
Yeah.
I mean,
But this is exactly
it's
why,
gonna make it worse.
it's why I'm bringing this up, is that there are a lot of people that are afraid to move right now. And this is contributing to our lower inventory, but unfortunately, it's actually creating a lot of problems for us, because it's with the lack of inventory, it's bringing up the prices. Obviously, more inventory would stop having the rapid increase in prices that we're having. And I mean, none of us can just solve this. This is the market does what the market does, but that is what's happening for a lot of people. We also have a lot of people that are still sitting on a lower interest rate too, that are saying, you know what, I still got another year or maybe another 2 years left on my low rate, so maybe I'll just sit tight and not do anything. So it is a problem for us, especially here in Alberta, and we all know that the interest rates, even where they're at, are not affecting the market. Like, everything is still selling. Things are selling with multiple offers. Like, the interest rates normally in a normal market, interest rates is always the talk of the town. Right now, it's taking a back seat to the fact that there's just such high demand. And then, of course, if the interest rates do come down and it brings more people into the market that want to buy, then we have, again, more buyers and not enough inventory. I don't know what the answers are going to be, but it certainly is something to really have some heart-to-heart conversations with your clients. And when it comes to move up, I like what Sandro said. I mean, if they're going to consider doing a move up and buy that more expensive property, they probably should really take a good look at the strategy around the short-term pain of taking like a 1 year, and then looking, banking on the fact that the rates will come down and then your payments will be that much lower. The question will be is timing, and of course that's only an answer each individual can make. As an individual, I think all of us have to be very careful that everybody's at a different place in their own lives. We're not here to look at things through our own lenses. Okay, we have to make sure that we're pretty diplomatic about how we present this, because everybody sees something a little bit different. And because we never know what the market will do, I always say this could be the most perfect time to do what you want to do, because a year from now, I can't predict what actually things will look like. So that's why everybody has to have their own level of comfort with it. But I think you definitely need to talk strategy when it comes to interest rates. And this is why it's great. You can have them even talk to Sandro, and he can explain it all to them, and then give them all their options. And you need to have that kind of person when they're making their decision. Okay, what time do we have? It's amazing. 20 minutes left. There's never enough time for these meetings. This caught my eye. Shifting gears here, the top 5 excuses for leads not converting. Now, some of you really only work with past client and referral, and that's great. Actually, past client and referral is a great place to be. And I can tell you, if you do it right, you have a pretty consistent business. But if you want to increase your business every year, you have to generate leads. And we've talked about this before, and I know Michael here will agree with me. You probably don't really want to put too much effort into lead generation unless your past client referral database is really being worked properly. You should have a really good system for that, and you should have actually getting clients every single month from that before you really put too much investment in this. Now, that being said, I've done online lead generation for a long time, and I actually I like it. And the reason I like it is because I found ways of getting pretty good at it. And but it doesn't come without challenges, right? And you can spend money on this and be very frustrated. Biggest reason why realtors get frustrated with online lead generation is their expectations are too high. You're expecting, okay, I spent $500 to generate these leads, and if I have to spend it again, another 500 next month, the next month, the next month, and all of a sudden 6 months go by and you spent all this money and you haven't converted one of them, you're going, this doesn't work. Well, you have to understand, when you're doing online lead generation, a lot of these people are at a minimum, and I mean a minimum, 6 months away. Oftentimes they're a year and a half away. They are in the very, very early stages of real estate. And this is where agents that do it get very frustrated because, like I said, 6 months go by, you spent all this money, or 8 months go by, you haven't seen anything for it, and you're feeling like it doesn't work. But I can tell you it does work, but this is what you have to do, and this is why I bring it up. Of course, I said they ghosted me. Well, of course, that's what people do. They live in the world of that. I'm going to tell you something. I will guarantee you this. Just because a lead ghosts you doesn't mean it's not a good lead. You wouldn't believe how many leads I've done over the years where I got nothing from them for a year, but I continually reached out to them with a variety of different ways. And then boom, all of a sudden you get an email and they'll say, hey, we're interested in listing our house. Can you come over tomorrow night? I can't even tell you how many times that's happened to me. For somebody that had absolutely zero communication for the longest time. But most agents would have just kicked them to the curb. There would have been no follow-up system. So what I'm getting at is, if you're going to do online lead generation, if you don't have a really well done follow-up system set up, and I mean texting and email and phone calls and video, it all has to go. You have to remember something. I've said this before. It's like they walked into your store. They're in your store. It's like having a retail store. Somebody walked in. They're not buying today, but you want them to come back to your store at some point in time. Now it's your job to market to them. An online lead now is simply somebody who you now can market to. You have their name, you have their phone number, you have their email. It's your job now to consistently reach out to them a variety of different ways. So at some point when they're ready, they call you, because you guys know how it works. The moment someone's ready to buy or sell a house, who do they pick? The person who's most visible. That's who they pick. Person who's most visible. Of course, I hear this too. There's not enough houses for sale with this low inventory market. Some of you feel like, well, do I really want another buyer? Most of the realtors I'm talking to right now, they have too many buyers. It's like, this is frustrating because I can't find what they're looking for. Okay. Here's the thing to remember though. Never, ever stop looking for buyers. Ever. Because I can tell you something. You might have 5 buyers trying to buy, we'll say, like, depending on whether you're in the central Alberta or whether you're in Edmonton or whether you're in Calgary, there's certain segments of the market that are the hottest. Like for Calgary right now, the hottest is those townhouses. Like townhouses are insane. It's like everybody wants a townhouse. Why? Because that price point of about 400 to 475 is like the sweet spot, right? So it's like, if I had 5 buyers looking for townhouses, like, oh, please, how am I going to find them? But then if you keep searching for more buyers, it'll happen. You'll get that buyer that's looking for the $1 million property. And you'll notice the nice thing about working with buyers, the more expensive that they go up in price, the less the competition, right? That's how it works. There's the bulk of the people can afford a $450,000 townhouse, but a lot smaller percentage of the market can afford a $1 million property. So if you keep looking for buyers, ultimately you pull one out that is looking at a higher price piece of real estate and you'll have less competition. That's why you keep looking. So dig deeper. Now, by the way, here's some, I'm going to send this out to you all so you can read some of this. I don't have to like read every single thing that's on here, but I want everybody to take a look at this when I send it out today. But you know, this one part right here, it says canvass the neighborhood to find relevant properties through golden letters, door knocking and expireds from 3 years ago. So we're still testing this. I started testing this about 6 weeks ago of sending out letters. So if you have a buyer and you actually do a really nice letter, you say, in my letter, it says, I have a real buyer, not a fake buyer. It's a real buyer. Bob and Mary Smith are looking to buy a house in your community. And they have flexible possession dates. So if you haven't even began, deciding or figuring out where you want to move to, my buyers are flexible they just want to be in this community. And you could go as far as putting a picture of Bob and Mary Smith. I've seen this work. I know a realtor in Rhode Island that's been doing it, and he's got a picture of the family with their dog, and they even said, this is our dog Ruffy, and Ruffy is going to get another dog, and we need to be in a home that allows for dogs. And it all even has a little bit about what he does for a living. He's a fireman. She's whatever she does. I can't remember what she did for a living was, but anyway, it's making it really legitimate, and they're willing to pay fair market value. These are not house flippers, because most of those handwritten letters that you see that show up that says, we'll buy your house for cash. Well, those are house flippers. They want to buy your house for a wholesale price. Bob and Betty Smith, they just want to be in your neighborhood. They're willing to pay fair market value. They're not looking to buy it for lower than fair market value. That's what I'm talking about. You could do this for your buyers, and it's a win-win. It's only the cost of a stamp. And by the way, if you handwrite it, we've already proven this, you have a higher chance of it getting looked at. Because right now, nobody gets anything in the mail right now unless it's a bill, right? It's about the only thing you get in the mail now. Everybody gets email. We get 1 million emails every day. When you see a handwritten letter, come in the mail, that's like a big deal. That's a really big deal. When I was a kid, you could get handwritten letters all the time. No one, we go to the mail, it's no big deal, right? Nowadays, getting a handwritten letter is a really big deal. So I think your chances of them opening it are pretty high. And to me, if you did this consistently, and I think, I don't know, I'm trying to send about 10 of these out a day. I think it's worth it. It's not a ton of money, but it's a great way of potentially meeting sellers, because we all need inventory so badly, but you're also helping your buyer. Of course, oftentimes realtors say the leads are bad. Yeah, that's because, again, realtors who say online leads are bad, is their definition of a bad lead is the person didn't want to buy a house tomorrow. That's what the average definition of a bad lead is. Either they ghosted you or they're not ready to buy right away, so they call that a bad lead. So, this goes back to what I already just said, and this goes for any market. I actually got this from a realtor named Alyssa Morgan in Florida. They have the same challenges here. Again, these people are in the early stages, so just understand that. But take it from me, if you really even just start now, so you're not even doing online leads, but you want to make a small investment, or even if you just want to use Facebook Marketplace, I mean, it's free, but you can start adding these leads into your database, and you can start continually marketing to them. I know some of the most successful things I've done is I send out a video email every month, and I go over the Real Info Box charts, and I explain what the market is doing, what's happening. And inevitably, I get at least 1 or 2 responses from that every single month from people that follow me. So if you just have to have a system in place where you just market to these people, I'm telling you, if you get a big enough database of it, it starts to kick in, but it takes about 6 months to a year, maybe 18 months. That's all. And it goes back to that. People don't like talking on the phone. See, this is the world we're living in now that everybody has to remember. And it's especially since these scam calls that have happened since COVID. It's been insane. I mean, I don't know one person that hasn't had a scam call like every week, right? And it has gotten to the point now where everybody looks at their phone. Who's that calling? I don't recognize the number. I'm not answering it. So knowing that, it's not that the person you're trying to call
doesn't want to talk to you. They will talk to you. They just want to know in advance whether you're somebody worth talking to. That's what it comes down to. So I just actually clued into this recently. I just kind of had an aha moment myself. And I thought, yeah, you know, as I was reminiscing of the days when I used to call and people would just pick up the phone and they didn't know who was calling. And it would be like, oh, I don't know who's calling, but I'm excited. I'm excited to actually answer the phone and find out who's calling. And I kind of had this aha moment. I said, I get it now. What's really changed is, yes, I don't want to answer my phone unless I already know who's calling. That's what it comes down to. So they want to talk to you and they will talk to you. They need something from you by way of text or email or video or something to be sure that you're worthy of a conversation. And then they'll talk to you. That's the world we live in. I would rather have it be the old days, but that's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. This is how it is today. We have to respond accordingly. And of course, I don't have enough time to follow up with my leads. Well, the truth of the matter is, if you do this right, you don't have to be spending all your time trying to phone people, trying to text them. You can automate this. And especially now with AI, there's a lot of tools that you can use. You know, like I'm even using that Sales Tool Pro app. There's a lot of tools that you can use to send out automated emails, automated text messages. It's just about creating a system. So my best advice to you is, this is why I mention this, if you have any aspirations to generate leads, if you're not willing to build a system that goes with it, don't even do it. Don't even begin doing it, because it's a marketing system you have to have in place. But once you set it up and build it correctly, you don't have to spend a lot of time on it. That's the key. All right. So the biggest thing to remember is that real estate's a pipeline. What we do today is setting up for the coming months. I always say that there is a planting season and there's a harvest season. And to be successful in this business, you should know which clients you're harvesting today, and you should know which ones you're planting today. But we're forever planting, and then we're harvesting a certain amount every single month. That's how this business works. So that's why you never, like, it's kind of a funny thing, but my whole career, every time I'm in the process of working with a client and I'm actually selling them a property, my brain is also thinking about who my next client is. My brain's always worked that way. I don't just put my all into the client I'm working with. I'm forever thinking about, okay, this is great. I'm gonna service this client. I'm gonna do the job that they've hired me to do. But my job equally is important to know where my next client's coming from. If I don't think this way, I don't have a business that's consistent. And when I came into this real estate business all those years ago, I wanted a consistent business. I didn't want a feast and famine business. There's nothing worse than having, you know, a really good month, a bad month, a good month, and a bad month. It's just like a yo-yo. It's ridiculous. That's not a business. That's a sales career. A business has systems, period. You follow systems, you follow a regiment, and you do it consistently every single day, and then you get consistent results in your business. If you want to have a sales career, yeah, because I can tell you, I'd say probably 80% of the realtors out there, it's just a sales career, and their business is just like this. It's up and down, and they always want to blame the market. Those realtors make me laugh. It's always either the market is bad or the market is too good. Well, we got too many buyers, like too many sellers. Like, it's just so funny over the years I've heard it. It's always something to do with the market. It's never themselves. Never once do they look at themselves in the mirror and go, well, maybe I haven't done this right. It's always somebody else's fault.
Walmart. They know that this is something they set up.
They said that
It's not they're not looking at one.
the entire business. That's exactly right. Because it's an absolute system. Yeah. And this business of real estate, you do it right, can be very predictable.
You do it wrong, it'll be very unpredictable. It's really that simple. Okay, I don't have a lot of time to go through this, and I can't believe we're running out of time this quickly, but I may even have to do some of this by next week. But I wanted to do a segment on get back into DISC, and I want to do a segment of who we're actually dealing with, because you know, the better that we can actually understand the people we're talking to, or even the people that we're texting, I try to do this every time I'm making a connection with somebody, kind of at a subconscious level, because I practiced it for so long. You know, this is something you really have to practice over and over again. And I'm not psychoanalyzing people. I'm just trying to understand, if I can get a sense of how they think, I can deliver my service to them a little bit better. So the silent generation, all right, and this generation now, you know, that was born before 1946, they're not buying too many houses. So I'm not too concerned about this generation too much for our business. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but I'll send this out to you. You can read it over. The baby boomers, even now, they're still buying, but they're not obviously the biggest part of our market anymore. A lot of the baby boomers are pretty comfortable with real estate now. There's still some movement there, but not nearly as much. But I kind of look at these characteristics, you know, that run local, state, national governments. They are very involved in government. I think they still are the largest workforce. It's possible. I don't know if that's 100% true. Believe that rules should be obeyed unless they are contrary to what they want, then they're to be broken. Experimental individualism, social cause-oriented, free-spirited, can be less optimistic, cynical, and distrust government. And they want products and services that show their success. So just think about those characteristics. You see, even though we're generalizing here, but this is why, you know, I always start with this, but then you want to drill down into their personality profile. But you have to remember something. Each generation, we did grow up with certain political environment. I mean, if you take a look at, you know, how the world was 30, 40 years ago, and how things were, some things that were not accepted, some things were accepted. You know, like for example, 30 years ago, there was no such thing as the LGBTQ, right? That's now a very common acronym that people are familiar with, very accepting now, whereas 30, 40 years ago was not. So when you think about some of the way these people grew up, it still affects their decisions on how they do things. That's why I said to you, when you take a moment and just think about this stuff and you practice it and just know the background of where they're coming from, because I still, to this day, when I go meet with my parents, like my parents are 80 years old, and the way they talk is so funny. Like, it's just so different than the conversations that I'm having from day to day, right? But they're retired, living in their house, but they still kind of have this really different way of thinking of how they grew up. And they approach things on what they do that way. Like my dad won't even use a bank card. He will not use online banking because he's afraid that something is going to go wrong, right? To this day, he's driving to the bank to go and see them. The Generation X, 1965 to 1980, this is my generation right here. I like this. Characteristics: quest for emotional security, independent, very self-reliant, informality, entrepreneurial, expect immediate and ongoing feedback, and is comfortable giving feedback to others, which I thought was interesting. I kind of realized I do like getting good feedback. I like the feedback. I think it's true. Our generation's okay with saying what's on their mind a little bit more. Reject rules, definitely. Mistrust institutions. Believe friends do not equal family. Latchkey kids. I'm not sure what that term means. Latchkey kids? Nobody knows? Multitaskers.
Kids are always hanging around.
We value family time.
It seems actually a kid who comes home to an empty home or is left alone by himself a lot.
Oh, a kid that was left home by himself a lot. Oh, parents are always working.
Yeah.
Well, that makes sense. There was a lot of us that had that, yes. No wonder my generation's had so many problems. Now, again, I'm just highlighting the characteristics. We don't have much time to look at all this, but I want you all to take a good look at this. And like I said, you can see a little common denominators here that you'll find interesting. Look at the millennials, okay? This is, what do they have for millennials? 81 to 94.
That was written by a boomer.
Yeah.
That was written by a boomer.
Ambitious yet clueless. Isn't that funny? They're optimistic. Is that true, Michael?
Well, hey, I'm a next generation. You gotta go over here. The young one.
Impatient. I love this. The millennials are impatient. They're entrepreneurial, individualistic yet group oriented. They want to be like peers, but with a unique twist. Very informal, busy, short attention span. Acknowledge and admire some authorities, more culturally and racially tolerant, acceptant of change, untrusting of the man. Is that a government? Would it say the man?
Yeah.
Gonna screw the man. Achievement oriented, financially savvy, and they want instant gratification and they want everybody wins. Okay. So, like I said, you think about these characteristics, it's very generalizing. It's not specific to each individual, but when you get to understand this stuff, like I said, you can do a little bit better job in connecting with them.
Of course, it's also known as the entitlement generation.
The entitlement generation, yes, yeah.
Just come out and say that.
This is gonna turn into like a group therapy.
All right, I got just enough time to look at the Generation Z. And by the way, I got two versions of this that I pulled off, but yeah, born after 94. Oh, they look at you as grandpa. By the way, this generation is not to be ignored, especially in Alberta. You would not believe how many people in this age group are looking at real estate right now. So this is not to be ignored.
Well, I mean, you're 30.
That's right. That's, yeah. They want to own real estate and they want to own it badly. So here's some characteristics. Highly connected to the use of communications. Well, I love how they use the word connected to the use of communications. They're never going to answer their phone, right? But they are connected to their phone. They like instant gratification. So when they go online and they want information, this generation expects to get it, no hassle, nothing. They feel very entitled to all of the information right now. Like they've never not grew up in the world of having to seek for information. They want it all at their fingertips. Thrive on acceleration and next. I never even thought about that. Excuse me, if they move on quickly. Independent people lacking a community-oriented nature due to social media. Very open book with little concerns to privacy and personal information, except when it comes to money. Isn't that interesting, eh? Thrive on small bits of information. Think in terms of status and Twitter language. Like the Twitter language, eh? Like all of the little language you put on your text messages, like it's another language I don't even understand. Yeah. Although I did a little stand-up comic routine, by the way, with my parents' friends that are all seniors. And I put on their texting for seniors. So I had things like, BTW was, I said, that means bring the walker. LOL, I said, that's living on Lipitor. They thought that was pretty good. Anyway, under a lot of pressure to succeed. So here, by the way, I thought this was also interesting. Values that the Gen Z wants brands and companies to support. This is from March 2023. Mental health at 53%. The environment, climate change, and sustainability, 47%. Racial and gender equality or equity, is that right? Ethical labor practices, fair trade, ethical sourcing, livable wages, LGBTQ rights, and civic engagement, political activism. When I looked at that, I thought, my generation doesn't consider those things as much at all.
Grandma's idea of mental health was a pencil in the back of my head.
Right.
Smarten up.
Right. Yeah, I mean, seriously, because my generation to think that someone could actually have a mental health issue, they just looked at it as, you just got some problems from your childhood, deal with it, you know?
Yeah.
Get to work. So, anyway, I'm gonna have to continue with DISC next week, and I apologize for that. I just won't have enough time for today. But anyway, this, we'll do a deeper dive into DISC for next week and how we take some of this now. This is more of a, our larger scope, and I'll narrow it down into individuals. But just take notice of this, and I can tell you, as you're trying to build rapport, depending on the generation you're with, don't ignore this stuff. That right, what you see right there, to have an understanding of this, and maybe even to a support of all of it or some of it, could be the difference maker as to whether they choose to work with you. And it might be something you even bring up. You know, maybe, I'm just giving examples, maybe some of your commission you're going to donate to something specific that might be related to one of these things that fits in line with their values. Mental health, there's lots of places. Julie's a little bit of an expert on that. There's lots of places you could put your money and time into when it comes to mental health. Am I right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So many.
Yeah, so many. So there we go. Hopefully this has been helpful today. Thanks for everybody for coming. Yeah, we'll see you all next week.
Well, Thinking about me on this.
No, I was thinking, you know, you did your comedy skit.